Hello and welcome everyone. I'm so glad to have you here today. I am Michelle Rasmussen. I'm the AEC Content Manager for Autodesk Learning Services Group in the Customer Success Organization. And today we're going to be talking about communicating design intent at public meetings. So while we're waiting on everyone to join, I thought what we'd do is just find out who's with us today. And if you would, please go ahead and put in the question answer panel where you're coming from. So if you're joining from Denver, which I can see Karen. Hi, Karen, you're joining from Denver. Jonathan from Ireland, this is great. Christy is from Charlottesville. Welcome, Carl from Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, in fact. Stephen from Kansas City. Sam from St. Louis, Missouri. Care from Chicago, welcome. Robert, I see you're joining us from Nevada. I'm actually heading there today. And things are coming in fast. This is great. So I see John from Canada, from looks like Moncton. And I see we have some from Israel and more from Texas. We've got Calgary, Alberta on the line. Welcome, Matt. And Jack from England. This is wonderful. I still see the numbers are still rising, so we're going to give everyone another minute or so to get joined. I know sometimes logging in, especially the first of the year after a long break over the holidays, it can be difficult to make your machine do exactly what you want, can't it? So welcome everyone. I'm so glad to have you here. Hopefully we've got a large variety of who's joining us. In fact, while we're still waiting on the numbers, everyone to join, because we had about 450 people actually registered to join us today. So while we're waiting, I'm going to open up a little poll and just find out who we have in here. So I want to know how many of you as BIM managers actually need to communicate the design intent at public meetings or making sure it's on your website. You know, what is it that you are responsible for? Are you responsible for communicating that design intent? So about 57% saying no at the moment, 36% saying yes. It's kind of going back and forth. No, about 28% saying yes, so not nearly as many as I thought. I know initially when the BIM manager role was introduced, and there were a lot of you that actually dealt with more public meetings than you deal with now. I think now you're much more in the realm of managing things in the back end, but it never hurts to know what you can do to help your team to present what they need to at public meetings, or like I said, at any meetings. Maybe it's client meetings that you're dealing with, whatever the case might be. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. It looks like our numbers are starting to level off now, so we will go ahead and get started. So I'll share the results with you. About 29% actually said, yes, you do have to present or communicate the design intent at public meetings or other meetings. So great. Sounds like I'm not too far off with my estimate. So welcome everyone. Again, my name is Michelle Rasmussen. We're going to have our BIM Manager Community Virtual Meetup today. And some of you may be asking the question, what does that entail? If you are new to our meetups, I just want to let you know before we get too far, your line is muted. That's just so that we have a nice clean recording for the for after the fact. So for those that weren't able to join, they'll be able to watch this afterwards. And we want to make sure that's a clean recording. So yes, your line is muted. However, I do encourage working back and forth, asking questions. And so if you have questions, you can ask those questions in two ways. You can ask them in the question box, or you can raise your hand in that audience panel. So in the GoToWebinar panel, there should be an option. There's a little hand there to raise your hand. If you'd like to ask your question live, feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute your line when we get there. So, and then of course, since this is being recorded, a link to the recording will be provided at the end when it's all done processing in the background. So again, welcome. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. Hopefully you got some good rest, good time with family and friends. But let's go ahead and jump in. So our virtual meetups, for those of you that are new, we do have several meetups. In fact, you might notice if you've come to these before that there are 2 new ones. In fact, so new, I don't even have images for them yet. Our building engineer meetup is going to be starting up the 4th Thursday in February. And our vault and data management meetup is going to be starting up on the 4th Thursday in January. So wait, did I say that right? Building engineer starting in February. Vault is starting in January. So I'm so excited to be able to introduce those to you, and I'm sure you'll be getting more information, especially since as a BIM manager, you might be interested in one of those to just see what's available and then be able to either recommend it to your team, whoever it might be relevant to, or pass it on to partners that you think might be interested. But these virtual meetups, we really want to make sure that we're providing you an opportunity to connect with experts as well as with each other. And so that's why I highly, highly encourage questions and encourage you to ask them live or in the question panel. If you ask them in the question panel, I'll repeat the question to everyone before I answer it. And if you are ever interested in presenting at one of our meetups, I welcome you to send me an email. Definitely, let me know. Or at the end of the webinar, you'll be able to answer a quick little survey, and there should be an option to leave your email address in there so I can reach out to you. So, all right, well, to no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So today's meetup is actually based on one of the courses in our Connected Learning experience. And so let me introduce you to that. If you have not been introduced to our Connected Learning experience in the past, this is a great way for you to learn completely free of charge. So we have several courses in our Connected Learning experience. We have them for architects, civil engineers, BIM managers, and MEP engineers. We're adding to this frequently. We just launched this in July. And so hopefully you'll be patient with us as we add more content that becomes more and more relevant to you. But we do have a full BIM management section. So if I click on that, you'll notice it goes down and shows us what is available. Now, there's only 4 cards here, but we can see more when we go to view all. So when I click view all, it's actually going to take us over to, oops, let's go back. It shows you the full learning path, setting up your BIM execution plan, what you might do during the existing conditions modeling as a BIM manager, definitely coordinating and work sharing. That's a huge part of your job, I'm sure, making sure everyone's on the same page, and going through the conceptual design analysis, and of course, what we're talking about today, communicating that design intent. So specifically what we're going to be doing is communicating the design intent using storyboards in InfraWorks. So I am so curious, if you don't mind, let's just practice raising our hands there. How many of you or your teams actually use InfraWorks to communicate the design intent with others? So if you will, raise your hand in the attendees panel. So I see a few of you raising your hand. That's wonderful. If you're not using InfraWorks, it's definitely a great way to communicate that design intent, whether you're on the architectural side, the building engineering side, or the civil engineering side. Any way you go, you can definitely use InfraWorks to communicate that design intent to see what's going on. So thank you all for participating in that. Thank you. So I'm just lowering your hands there so we can keep going. But basically, when I click into this course, you'll notice that, whoops, let's go to the back to the welcome. So this is basically what you'll learn. You'll learn how to create storyboards with captions and animations and export those storyboards to external videos. The course only takes 15 minutes. In fact, the majority of our courses in our Connected Learning experience do only take 15 minutes. So I welcome you to go peruse that, take a look at some of the other BIM management courses that are available to you, and let us know what else you need to learn, or you need to understand to be more effective as a BIM manager. So, all right, well, let me go ahead and open up InfraWorks then, and let's talk about what a storyboard is. Storyboards are wonderful ways to really help people understand what they will see when the project is built. Now, you can see it's a pretty realistic environment. We have trees in here, we have grass and roads with painting on the roads. You can add vehicles to your models, whatever the case might be. But let me go ahead and play a storyboard that I created right before this meeting so that you can see the power of what a storyboard can do for you. So I'm going to just click play, and you can see it's acting like you're driving through the development. And this is a mixed-use development, so you can see there are roads in here our civil engineers worked on. There are buildings that our architect and building engineer worked on, and I can see that my computer is lagging a little. I'm going to turn off my webcam to help that display a little bit better. Okay. And it's still lagging a little bit. The graphics in here are quite extraordinary, and when you're trying to present it over GoToWebinar, it can slow it down a little bit. So I apologize for that, but we'll go ahead and take a look at how I created this storyboard so that you can go ahead and try doing that for yourselves as well. Let me actually just pause this really quick. One thing before I get in and start showing you, I am very curious how many of you actually took that online course before this meetup. So I'm going to start a poll. I'm going to launch that really quick. And so how many of you did actually take the course in the Customer Success Learning Hub? Okay, so the majority of you are saying no. That's okay. You're going to learn quite a bit of it. In fact, I'm going to cover a few things that aren't in that course. But the nice thing is you can always come back and watch the recording of this, or you can go into that course that, again, it's completely free so that you can see how to do this yourselves. And that course, it actually shows you how to do something and then has you practice it by downloading the file that I'm using in this webinar to create your own storyboard so that you can present at meetings. So I see about 71% saying no, and 28% of you are saying, hey, I'd like more information on that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and give you the link to that course directly. And so let me scroll down and click on that. So I'm going to copy this link into the chat panel, and please let me know if you do not have the chat panel, or if that does not show up for you once I send it. So I just sent you the link. If you're not seeing it in the chat panel, send me a question in the Q&A panel, and I will put that link in the Q&A panel as well. Okay. Okay, and I see some questions coming in. So Mariana is saying the phone number in the email notification is not working. Is there another number? Ooh, it looks like she has left the meeting anyway. So apologize for that. I'm going to have to get our GoToWebinar team to take a look at that. So apologize. All right. So now that you know where you can go and take that free course at your own pace when you have time and be able to practice everything that I'm showing you, let's actually jump in and take a look at it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take a look at my development. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, and you can see this is a very complex development. I have a train track running along the side. It looks like we've got a freighter train. It might be a commuter rail. It depends on what we have here. We have a learning facility here, some apartment buildings over here in the background, some retail space, a lot of parking, a medical facility, and it looks like there's a gas station as well. So a lot of stuff happening here. And if we were going to have a meeting with the public, they're going to want to know how is this going to affect them? What is this development going to do, especially in these neighboring developments? You know, I don't want someone developing this big complex in my backyard. It's going to be annoying. Or maybe I do. Maybe I want to have access to that gas station and all the retail shopping and everything. But the key point is, you need a way to get the public bought in on this development. And it's better to get them bought in early on in the process rather than waiting until construction starts. You know, I remember when we had a project, I'm from Utah, and we had the Legacy Highway going in, and the Legacy Highway was a very small stretch of road, just a few miles of road, and it was going to help alleviate a lot of the congestion on I-15 during rush hour commute. So it was, you know, taking people from the Layton area all the way down to Salt Lake and providing them a little bit smoother commute with less congestion on I-15. And to do that, to put the Legacy Highway in, it was really close to some wetlands. And in fact, it looks like we might even have some wetlands in this project, depending on, you know, what that pond or river or whatever that is looks like. And so you might need to communicate, how is this going to affect those wetlands? But what happened is, you know, they had the public meetings. It wasn't very well publicized, but they did have the public meetings. Nobody really showed up. But everything went through really smooth during the design process. Everything got approved. And then when they started construction, the activists got very upset. They're like, oh, you can't do that. There's wetlands there. You can't do that. And so they ended up having to stop construction, which cost taxpayers a lot of money in construction stoppage costs. And the road ended up costing millions and millions of dollars more than it should have because of those construction stoppages. So you want to avoid that, right? And so there's a number of things I can do. I can actually show this development just like if I were panning around as I'm doing right now. You could show it as if you're driving down the road, as I was showing earlier in the storyboard that I created. But let's learn how to actually start that. Now, I do have to tell you, I do have the latest version of InfraWorks installed. And so you can see I have the option here under Present and Share to turn on my storyboard creator. Now, when I do that, that is a separate window. This is a little panel that you can move to a separate window if you want, so that you have a lot more real estate to see the storyboard as it develops. But I'm just going to leave mine here so that you can easily see it. And I'm going to create a new storyboard. So over here, I'm going to go into my storyboard option. Whoops. I'm going to right click and add a new storyboard. So now I have a blank slate. It looks great. The first thing I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to set this up so that you can make it simulate driving down the road. Now, to do this, you do have to have component roads set up. I, in fact, do, so that makes it easy. In fact, this road right here is the component road that I will use. And it looks like a great little road. It has some intersections going on. You can read, if I zoom in enough, you can see this is station 794. And if I scroll down, whoops, jumping back and forth between Civil 3D and InfraWorks can sometimes be confusing because our panning is a little bit different between the two. But let me see. So let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Now I'm starting to see stations. Now, why did I care about seeing those stations? Because when I go and create some view frames according to our road, I need to know what direction our stationing is going, because I can put them in a positive direction or in a negative direction. So that's the first key thing that I would say to look for. And in the storyboard panel, I'm going to go in and create a new camera path. So I'm going to click on the Add Camera Path animation, and I can import it from someone else's path that they've created. Maybe I want to borrow someone else's path from another presentation, or I can create one from a component road, and I'm going to actually show you how to add one manually as well. So I'm going to create my camera path from the component road. It's going to ask me to select the road, so I'm going to select that component road, and you can see that it brings up this dialog box. So again, it was important for me to understand what direction the road was going so that I can put it in the right spaces. So basically, the center of that component road, the center line of it, will be where that offset is dictated from, both in the horizontal and vertical direction. So if I want to make it look like I'm driving down a lane, I may need to offset it by 10, 15 feet, depending on how wide that island is. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 15 feet. And my vertical offset, let's say, oh, I don't know, maybe 4 feet there. Maybe I'm in a truck, and so my view angle from a vehicle that's a little bit taller might be 4 feet tall, might be 6 feet tall, depends on your truck or your car, whatever you're driving. And then my target offset. This is what direction do you want the camera to actually face? And so I'm going to put a horizontal target offset of about 10 feet. So it looks slightly to the right as I'm driving. That way I can see the development a little bit better as I'm driving by. And my vertical offset, I'm going to put that at 4 feet as well. And you can see here I can reverse the direction, or I can make it relative to the road. And I always like to preview this because it will put the camera right at those offset values that I've specified. So I'm going to click preview. And you can see that looks like it's a pretty good place. Maybe I want to go into the right lane, and so I might want to put this at 20 feet instead and preview that. The nice thing about that preview is I can see exactly what it will look like before I commit to it. So I like that right lane. I'm going to go ahead and drive in the right lane, and I'll click create. We're going to give it a minute to populate all of the views. So what this is doing is, you know, everyone's familiar with how videos work. They're just a bunch of different still shots that are captured, and when you move through them quickly, of course, it makes it look like you're in real time. So if I select on one of those keyframes that it created for me, I can click the Go to Location option, and it will start me at that thumbnail wherever it might be. So that looks pretty good. It's going down the road as I would have expected. And you can see I didn't put the keyframe right at the beginning of the road, so I may want to go back a little bit further and click on that and go to that keyframe. And I do like to make sure that when I start my video playing, I always give it time to regen, and then I'll hit play, because you can see it took a minute to get all of the information in there. There is a lot of information in this model. I mean, it's crazy the amount of information that is in here. Now, I'm going to put my playhead right here so that it starts at that keyframe. And when I hit play, it's going to simulate driving down. I can see there's a pedestrian walkway going across that main road. Keep those pedestrians safe to get back and forth from the commuter rail to the apartments or the retail. But this is going rather slow. In fact, I don't like the pace that it's going. Well, I can modify how fast we're going down the road, or how fast it looks like we're going down the road. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select that original keyframe, that very first keyframe. And you can see over here in the settings that that keyframe is set to a speed of 37 miles per hour. I can change that. If I think it's going way too slow, I can up that. In fact, I'm going to double the speed. I'm going to put it at 70 miles per hour and hit enter. And the reason I selected the first one is you'll notice that all the other ones shortened as well. So when I click on the next keyframe, it's telling it to keep the speed. So the first keyframe sets it, all the others keep that same speed, or at some point I can actually slow it down as well. But that makes it really nice, because now when I come back and I play this, ooh, that looks much better. It looks more realistic in my eyes. And, you know, these videos, you don't want them to get too long. right now the video is set to 33 seconds, and that seems about right for me. That, we have to keep in mind the attention span of the audience that you're going to be displaying this for. So that's always a key thing to look out for. Now, I am going to wait until we get up to a certain intersection, and then I'm going to stop the video. Okay, so right about here, I am going to stop it. And in fact, instead of stop, I'm going to hit pause. And I can follow and see where that playhead fell. So instead of continuing down the road, all the way down the road, I'm going to stop it right here and have it turn just like that cab is turning. To do that, I do need to get rid of these extra keyframes that I don't need. Well, it's easy to do. All I have to do is right-click on one and delete that keyframe. Right-click again, delete the next one, and just keep deleting any extras that I don't need. So let me quickly get rid of all of these and show you how I could go to and add another keyframe manually to my storyboard here. So that ended the keyframes right where my playhead is. And in fact, I'm going to put, so let me talk a little bit about what we have here. So we've got the playhead, which is this blue box, and we have the editor, which is the red triangle. This is where I'm adding things. So it's very important to move this editor bar to the end if you're going to add to the end of your video. So I've done that. That looks good. And in fact, I'm going to pan a little bit further. And right about here, I'm going to go ahead and add a keyframe. So I'll just click on the plus symbol to add that. And if I go back and I play it from here, I can play that. It's going to go right up to the where I parked the cab. And now I can pan around. Oops, come on, where's my orbit? There we go. So I'm going to orbit the model, trying to keep the same distance there, and I can manually tell it that I want the next keyframe to go right here. So I'll put in another keyframe. I'll hit the plus symbol on my bar, and I'll go back again and play that for you so you can see how that worked. So you can manually add those keyframes and have the animation automatically transition for you, or I can add another component road animation. Now, I won't add that. I want to show you some others. So we have a lot more animations that you can add. So if I go in and add a crane animation, that's going to lift my camera up and look over the complex. I can do a look around. Maybe I want to, look around and see what my sight distance is to make sure that our sight distance is approved by the approving municipality. I can do an orbit. I can do a still motion. There's a lot of different things I can add. So let's look at that crane animation. Let me go ahead and click on that. And the key thing, when you are adding any animations, what you want to do is set up all your settings for that animation right over here in the settings area. Okay, so I'm telling it to start from this location where I'm at, and you can see the thumbnail of what that picture looks like. And then what do I want to do? Do I want to crane up? Do I want to crane down? Well, it doesn't make sense to crane down because I'd go below the pavement, but craning up makes a lot of sense to me. And what distance do I want to go up? So I'm going to raise that camera how far? Maybe I'll raise it 150 feet. And do I want to go back at all? Maybe I do. Maybe I want to go back about 50 feet. And do I want to move the camera angle to the left or right as it raises? So I'm going to raise that up to the right, and maybe I'll go 50 feet. The nice thing is I can always, again, preview this by just clicking the play button here to see what happens. Oops, looks like I might have gone the wrong directions. I told it to go to the right. Maybe I should have had it go to the left. Now let me play that again, and you can see the difference. Ooh, I like that. That looks a lot better. it's not quite going in the same direction as I'd like. So maybe, maybe my distance, I need to bring that back 150 feet and play it again. So again, the key is all your settings will manipulate how that camera adjusts as it goes from one position to the next. So let me just show you, I'll go back to this point and hit play. And while that's playing, I'd love to address some of the questions that have come in. So Brian is asking the question, can you select multiple keyframes using the shift key? You know, I don't believe that does work. I tried it earlier and it did not work for me, but one thing I didn't try is the control key. So let's actually go and address that, Brian, because the shift key did not work for me, but maybe I want to erase a bunch of these others at the beginning. No, it's not allowing me to select more than one. It allows me to select the whole set. Like if I wanted to take out this whole road, I could do that. But it looks like I do need to do one at a time, deleting one keyframe at a time. So unfortunately, no. Great question. Thank you, Brian. All right, other questions that maybe have come in? I'm going to see if anyone has raised their hand. It doesn't look like we have any hands raised. So if you do have questions on anything I've covered so far, shout them out. And with that, I'll keep going. Now, there's some other settings in here that I want to talk about. Let's say I'm going from, let's start it right from here again. When I hit play, you can see it looks really smooth. I'm going down the road. I make that turn. Okay. And now before it starts to do that crane animation, I may want to have some kind of break in the video right there. So I'm going to select that crane animation again. And I can set the transition option. I can do it as a cut. I can fade from black or fade from white. So I'm going to go ahead and put the fade in. And as soon as I do that, it needs to know how long do you want that fade to be in there. Do I want it for 1 second, 2 seconds, maybe 0.5 seconds? You know, how long do you want it? So I'm going to go ahead and hit 3 seconds so that it's very obvious. And I'll go a little bit closer there and I'll hit play again. Now watch what happens when I go through that animation. It starts to fade and now it's coming back out. So 3 seconds, it seems to me, was a little bit long. That's okay. The nice thing is I can change anything as long as I select that keyframe in my timeline and then add my settings. So adjust my settings, okay? So that makes it really nice to adjust between things and see how they look. All right, now you might be asking, you said there's an option to set up captions and titles. Yes, absolutely. One thing that I might do is come in and let people know, what road is this? And so if I need to check it, I can click on the road. And you can see the road name has been set up as South Santa Fe Drive. So to cheat, I'm going to just, I'm going to grab that by selecting the road name, Control-C to copy that, because I can be lazy sometimes. No, it's called efficiency. We want to be as efficient as possible, right? So now I'm going to come in and put my edit bar right here. Remember that triangle is the edit bar. Now I moved my playhead there as well by double clicking. So if I want to move it somewhere else, I can move it manually by dragging it. In fact, I'm going to move it up quite a bit. Oh, I think maybe, yeah, right there might be good. Okay. And so I want to let people know what this is. I can go ahead and add a new caption, or I can add a new title. So the title is really meant to be letting people know, you know, maybe it's the development name is the title, maybe it's the presentation name, whatever the title is for that. And then the caption allows me to add information. So you'll notice that the caption went in right here. There's my caption. And the settings area that we were looking at before, this is where you tell it what you want it to say. So I'm going to click inside of this where it says your caption, and I'm going to hit Control-V so that it says South Santa Fe Drive. And I'm going to move my playhead a little bit inside of that. Now, do you see it starting to show up right at the top there? That's exactly what I want to see. Do I want to see it right where it's at? Do I want to see it closer to the ground? You know, where do I want it to be? And is it the right size? So if I select that, I can actually change the font size of it. There it goes. And I can make it the size that I want. If I, let me scroll over a little bit, it keeps moving. If I go and change the container, there's a container tab here, I can change where that falls. I can set the location at the top left, center, right, center, bottom center, left. So if I click on the bottom center, you'll notice it moves it right down to the roadway. That might be a great place for it because it's very obvious that's the street name at that point. So let me go ahead and let the playhead play for a minute. It only appears when it's on that, but then as soon as I get off of it in the timeline, you'll notice it disappears. So you can actually add additional captions, or I can extend that caption to go out. You notice when I use the timeline and I put my cursor over the edge of the container, I can click and drag it out so that it continues to show that that is Santa Fe Drive right up until the point when I start to turn. So let's go ahead and watch that. Let me put my playhead a little bit back. There's no caption. I'll hit play. And one second, there it goes. There's the South Santa Fe Drive. I know I'm on that road now. And I won't make you sit through that whole thing, but you can see what you can do, you know, some of the things that you can do. Now, what if I want to add additional captions? Maybe I need to let people know what this building is over here. And if I click on it, oh, it's not labeled, it's just building. So you could label each one of these buildings if you wanted to name them so that people know very clearly what they are. And if you haven't, you know, you can always go back and communicate with the design team, hey, what is this building? So that you can make sure you have the right stuff. I do believe that this might be the retail area, so I'm going to go ahead and add another caption. And when I add another caption, it just gives me more space in that caption titles area so that I can see it. Because my insertion or my editor bar was right back here, even though my play bar was forward a little bit, that caption got put in where that editor bar is. So that's always a key thing. Watch that editor bar as you're doing this. So I'm going to select that caption. Excuse me one second. A little bit dry air today and making me cough a little bit. So right now my settings area is stuck on the container. Where do I want that caption? Well, I want that caption over here on the right. So I'm going to change the location of it to be the center right. That looks a little better, but it's not quite exactly where I want it. So I'm going to change my X offset a little bit. So I'm going to maybe put 2% in there. Nope, not quite enough. Let's put 5%. Oops, too far. Oops, I put 50%. That's why. There we go. Oh, that looks a little bit better. Great. And you can notice it changes the X and Y offset together, but I can change them independently as well. So I'm going to move that up a little bit and move that over a little bit more. Whoops, I'm going the wrong direction. Oh, that looks much better. Okay, great. I like the way that looks. Now I'll go ahead and move my playhead back a little bit. As I drive down the road, the caption of my building will show up. I forgot to change the name of it, but that's okay. You get the idea. Now my Santa Fe Drive road caption is showing up, and there we have it. So I definitely want to leave you room for some questions. I know we didn't get through all of the different animations that you can add, but I really encourage you to get in here and play with it because there are some great ways to show off your design and help everyone understand exactly what that project that you're working on is going to look like, so that they can clearly see. Because, you know, when you go to a public meeting, the general public doesn't always understand how to read those 2D plan views that you print out for the contractors. So seeing it like this very clearly communicates exactly what they will see when it is all complete. So let's open it up to questions. I really appreciate everyone joining. I don't see any hands raising, but do you have questions on how to do anything that I've shown you today? We have about 15 minutes left. Ooh, Brian, that's a really great question. Can audio be added to your storyboard? So there isn't a way to add audio to the storyboard inside of InfraWorks. However, one thing that I have done in the past when I worked for an engineering firm doing this kind of work for them, I used Camtasia. If you're familiar with that, you can take a look at that, or you can even use the screencast that comes with your Autodesk programs. You can use either one of those. And what I do is I clean up my viewing area here. So let's see, I think it's, have to remember how to get to a clean view now in the new software. Okay, so the view display, whoops, no, that's not the one I want. Oh, right here, gosh, full screen. So if I click on full screen and I take my storyboard and I move it to another screen, look at that, it makes it nice and clean. Then what I'll do is I'll take and turn on Camtasia and I'll record just this area where it's showing the model. And I'll add my voiceover in Camtasia, and that's how I go about adding audio to it. So Brian, hopefully that answers your question. Sorry, it's not quite as clean as it could be, but that might be something that we add to our wish list. So if you're a member of Augie, definitely add to your wish list for that. Yeah, you're very welcome, Brian. Thank you. Other questions that you have? Okay, so Thomas is asking the question, what data can be imported into InfraWorks? Oh, that is a great question. So there is a lot of different data that can be brought in. You can see we have our architectural models. Those came in from Revit. We have our roadways. These roadways, since this was a preliminary design, they were originally created in InfraWorks, but then you can take those out into Civil 3D without losing a beat. So since they're component roads, you can see they do have stations and offsets and everything like that. These come in as alignments into Civil 3D. So you don't have to lose any work that you've done. So you can start in InfraWorks, send it to Civil 3D, or start in Civil 3D, send it to InfraWorks. So you've got that option. If you have AutoCAD data, you can import that AutoCAD data into InfraWorks. You can import GIS data. One thing that I've done is showing the parcels. So you get the GIS shapefile or the ArcGIS file from your municipality or your government agency, whoever holds that data, and you can bring that in, and then you can make those parcels actually appear differently, or even highlight as you hover over one of them, right? So you can bring in the Revit models, the civil models, GIS data, and then quite a number of different GIS data, CAD files, 3D models. I've even gone in and, it comes with a lot of vegetation automatically, and you can add this vegetation as we have done to, to this model. We've added in all these trees. But when InfraWorks first came out, it didn't have quite as much data as I wanted. And we really wanted to show the landscaping and everything that was in there. And so we added a bunch of little 3D models of flowers. And we added all these flowers into our models when I worked for AWA Engineering. And it was amazing the result that we got and how much detail we could add. So you can import a lot of different types of data. And Tim is asking the question, I assume you're able to, but let's see. if you wanted to have different driving speeds, could you? Yes, let me show that to you. Let me turn off my full view there. Whoops, there we go. I had to turn that off so I could move my storyboard back into view. So here's my storyboard creator. I'm just going to double click on that so it appears. And what I can do is, you notice when I set my design speed, I started at my keyframe. However, I could come in here at any frame and choose a different speed anytime. So, whoops, I've just got to click set speed and change that to, let's go ahead and make it half of that, 35 miles per hour. And then I can go in and change that. Now, you noticed as soon as I hit enter there, it expanded those that are after it, because once you change it, because the default is set to keep speed, it's going to keep the speed of the last keyframe. So right here, this one, it's 70 miles per hour, and it's keeping that first keyframe speed. But then I changed this one to 35, and all of those after it, it's keeping that speed. So you can manually change each one, or you can go in and change them all by keeping that keep speed on. Great question. Okay, so let's see, I've answered Tim's and Thomas. Let's see, Brian is asking, how much time was put into creating this particular, I'm guessing you meant model, it's missing the L, just trying to get an idea of how this might play into a budget. So that's a great question, Brian. This model, it was intensive as far as time goes, only because, like I said, these models came in from Revit. So we had the modeling time in Revit. How long did it take to create these models in Revit? We had our civil engineer design some of the roads. Now the roads go in really quick, especially if you start in InfraWorks. You can go in and design these roads pretty quickly, take it out to Civil 3D, make adjustments, and bring in that finished plan. And so it can go quickly, it can go slowly. It just depends. Now, if you've ever watched our civil engineering webinars or meetups, Sean Hulbert actually had one that we talked about getting to 30% design in 30 minutes. And that's basically laying out the site by adding in, you know, starting with the model builder. The model builder will go out and find any free data that you can and bring that in automatically. It brings in your sky, it brings in your aerial photographs, a lot of that information. If there's rail or roads, it will bring in the roads that have been mapped. And then you can go in and start doing your own design. So it can come in quickly, but it depends on how much other modeling you want to do. Again, since we brought in our Revit models, you know, that Revit model took some time, that Revit model took some time. But then once that Revit model is done, you bring it in, bam, it falls in perfectly, especially if you have all your coordinates and everything set up. So Michelle is saying, I heard you can add pictures into the models as well as field pics. Yes, you can add images. Now, depending on what we're talking about here, aerial photographs, definitely. I mean, you can see I've got an aerial photograph in here right now that came from Model Builder. If I have other aerial photographs, maybe that's a lot more accurate. You know, some of the photographs you can get are within 6 inches as far as aerial photographs go. You can add those in, and when you do, you can change the order so that the more accurate photograph is on top of the original, and that will show you a lot more accuracy and be able to see that as well. So yes, Michelle, you can absolutely add more pictures. And Thomas is asking, can I export the storyboard as a video to watch in a public viewer? Yes, you can. I'm so glad you asked that, Thomas, because that is one thing that I was planning to show you. So great. What I would do is, excuse me, my throat is so dry. Okay, let's try that for a minute. All right, so I have my storyboard. It's all set up. I can tell it that I want to export the current storyboard. When I export the current storyboard, that's going to export a file that I could take from one model to another. Let's say we had a couple of different InfraWorks models, and maybe it's property that is close by. you know, maybe this is phase 1 of our development, and over here we're going to do phase 2. Well, if I already have a storyboard driving down that road, there's no sense in recreating the wheel. I just go ahead and export this out, send it over to the person who's doing phase 2, and let them use the same storyboard. Easy peasy. Reuse what you can. But to answer the question, can I export it? Yes, you can export that to a video. So if I click on the export to video, I can tell it how I want it encoded. So you've got a couple of different options on how to encode that. You can tell it where you want it to go, how many frames you want per second, and I can set the resolution. Now, I like to make it a little bit higher resolution. Sometimes I say, hey, go ahead and use the viewport resolution. But the higher resolution you go, the bigger that video is going to be. So it's going to be up to you to play with those numbers so that you get a good resolution that is clean and clear, but not so large that it doesn't fit on your website or wherever you're going to put it for the public to see. And then when you hit record, it's going to export that out and send that out. Now, you'll notice that you can actually export just a section of this. Maybe I only need to see from seconds 4 through 23. Well, I can do that. I can go ahead and tell it only go from 3 to 23, and it'll record just that section. So a lot of options there to play with that. Okay, so Newman is saying, I heard you can weave existing into the model to show the differences between proposed. Absolutely. In fact, it's all about proposals. So right now, we're looking at proposal number 2. If I come up here into my proposal selector, let that populate for a second, hold on. There it goes. I can go back and look at my master plan. The master plan is, most of the time you want that master plan to be what came in from Model Builder. So I'll give it a second to finish populating this. It's going to basically take out everything that I have added to the model and just give us what was that base that we started with. So it is taking a minute to configure that, change the view, so it's regenerating. This, like I said, this is a very, very large model. I have a lot of buildings in here. I have a lot of detail from that Civil 3D model, detail from our building models from Revit. So a lot of information. So thank you for being patient as it regenerates. But yes, you can absolutely show the differences. And in fact, the thing I love the most about InfraWorks is you can have so many different proposals in here. So right now we're looking at the master. You'll notice all my buildings have disappeared. My roads are there, except for that road that we designed. That's missing. But we can see some of our existing roadways, some of our existing waterways. This is what came in from Model Builder. And then when I go to existing conditions, what happened is we came in and we populated more of this. In fact, I think we had a GIS file, a shape file that had all of the outlines of the existing buildings. A lot of municipalities are doing that now, keeping shape files or GIS data in their GIS database that shows where the building outlines are. It makes it so much easier for you to not have to recreate the wheel when you're trying to show a model like this. So go and talk to your government agencies, your municipalities, your states, your counties, countries, whoever it might hold all of that GIS data, and take advantage of it. All right. Any other questions as this repopulates with what we added for existing conditions? So all really great questions. I appreciate you joining today. We have just a few minutes left, so we do have time if you have a question, or if you would like to raise your hand and have you ask your question live. I would love to have someone else's voice in here besides just mine. You might be sick of listening to me. I don't know. So I don't see any hands coming up. Okay. Well, I definitely want to thank all of you for taking the time, especially, we've used up the full hour here. So thank you for joining me. I really look forward to seeing you on the next meetup. I would love to know what topics you would be interested in. So let's maybe spend the last couple of minutes here. If you have specific topics you would like to see in the future, what problems are you trying to solve for? What things do you want to learn? I'd love for you to add that to the questions panel. Let me know. Like I said, you can always reach out to me later via email. It's michelle.rasmussen@autodesk.com if you'd like to send me an email. Otherwise, I want to let you go ahead and have a few minutes back to your day, let you get back to work. So again, thank you all, and we will see you in a month. Oh, thank you, Christina, and thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you in a month. Bye-bye.